Welcome to The Struggle is Real, a show for 20-somethings that are trying to figure out adulting. I'm your host, Justin Peters. Each episode, we focus on solving a problem that we will face throughout this defining decade that wasn't covered in the classroom. This could include topics about our career, health, relationships, and money. Let's get into it. Do you know what's worse than being set up on a blind date? Going on that date in front of a live audience. Oh, and when I say blind date, I mean literally blindfolded. That's the concept for the New York City-based comedy show, Updating. Imagine live dating meets a reality dating show. This non-scripted show includes audience participation, brutally honest moments, and relatable feedback in real time with real people. Joining me on the podcast today is the producer and co-host of Updating, Harrison Forman. Harrison created Updating with his partner, Brandon Berman. It was a bit of a mix of Harrison and Brandon's ideas, which you'll hear about early on in this episode. Harrison shares his highlights and lowlights of creating Updating, and you'll walk away with insights on dealing with rejection, overcoming self-doubt, and how, with a lot of hustle and a little belief, you can attract what you want to achieve in your life. I hope you enjoy my conversation with the comedian, connector, and creator, Harrison Forman. So I'm curious, you're an entrepreneur, a comedian, but I'm actually kind of fascinated. What do you, if you're at a cocktail party or just a party in general and someone asks you what you do, what do you say?
I say I'm a creator, producer, and comedian. That's
Okay.
usually, how I go about doing it. Obviously, the entrepreneur goes into it as well. But it is a really good question when you I Google like job title. I get too obsessed with these titles, honestly. Like, what are you? Are you the producer? Are you like the host? And the reality, what I'm telling people now, look, I'm a creator. I run this big show. We just got signed by an agent. We have our own production company. And I'm passionate about kind of telling stories and making people laugh and feel good.
So that show is Updating. It's a live dating show. Do you want to walk us through the show structure and,
Totally.
and kind of help the audience visualize really what it is?
So if you're listening right now, Updating, like you might be, what is Updating? So Updating, the way we describe it, it's a blind date in front of a live audience. So two singles, my co-creator and I, we set up two singles. We literally blindfold them and they go on a first date in front of a huge live audience with a lot of tricks and tips and little things in between. So throughout the show, there's comedic commentary. Brandon, who I run the show with, he'll chime in with questions or make it funny and interesting. I'll take messages from the audience as sort of like the audience host. So we make it it's an interactive show as well. So people can DM us during the show, questions, comments, if they want to take over the date itself. So it's super interesting. And the way I would think about Updating, if you're listening and you're going to check out our clips, it's raw, it's relatable. And in my opinion, like it's a dating show made for this era, right? This sort of TikTok era, this era of interactive live experiences, this era of unfiltered kind of programming and entertainment. Like that's what we do. That's what we're trying to do. And we've seen a lot of success here in New York, and I'm sure we'll get into where it's going next, but that's the high level.
Cool. Yeah. And I really do think Instagram or TikTok are a great place to really get a visual on what's happening on stage here. But essentially you half of the show, they're blindfolded and they're talking and your co-founder, Brandon, is helping with that dialogue. And then you have this halftime show as well. And then you do the reveal. What happens at the halftime show?
At the show, we call it the halftime report. And the halftime report, I'm sure those listening, I'm sure you as well, Justin, you've been on a date, your date goes into the bathroom, you're texting your buddies, you're texting your girlfriend. It's like, yo, I'm feeling it, but that dragon tattoo, I don't know. She's ordering all these drinks. Like, what should I do? And then you're like, oh, quick, wait, I got to get back to the date. So we do that on stage. So you are literally reporting on your date so far. So from going on the date, seeing your date blindfolded to seeing them without blindfolded. So it's truly a fascinating part of the show. It's sort of that pause, that moment when we can really find out what's happening. And it's for like the televisual side of Updating, like having those kind of TV moments, we call them. It's really interesting because you get people who give their halftime reports, the audience, we've just seen them on the same date, right? They've had one conversation, and the halftime reports we get often are very different, right? So we'll have, typically it's the guys who think she's so into her or
Yep.
so into him. So the girl will come out, look, I'm really into Mike, but he's not asking me any questions. I saw him without the blindfolds on. Something about his mustache. Like, I'm not, nice guy, but he's just a friend. Like, not a second date for me. And then we bring out Mike. He's like, yo, I'm obsessed with Brittany. I can tell she's feeling it. She's feeling it too. Like, I'm already thinking in my head, not even the second date, but the third or fourth date. Like, I already know where we're going, bro. Like, she's from North Carolina. So that's the halftime word in a nutshell. And then part of our show will reveal what they each said about each other in front of the other one. So it's super, super awkward. And then from there, a few different things can happen at updating. We'll bring the crowd involved. So we call them date crashers. So let's say you were in the audience, you just watch these two people on a date, you're seeing them strike out. We'll bring you to the stage. So I'll call over to Brandon, like, Berman, you're not going to believe this. We have Megan and we have Brittany in the crowd. They want to meet Mike. They love his Gucci shoes. They love his energy. Let's bring them up on stage. And this is when our show goes from like the dating game to Jerry Springer, a little bit like a modern Murray, Jerry Springer. And it's super fun. Like I said, it's raw. It's a long answer for the halftime report, but yeah. And it's funny, Justin, because a lot of looking back, and I'm sure I'll get into like my journey a little bit. Some of the segments of our show, of our content, are kind of sporty in a lot of ways, right? Like, we have the halftime report. You have this atmosphere that's like you're watching a sports game, and which I think is interesting. We have all these moments that kind of bring that aspect to this kind of show.
Was that intentional? Do you come from a sports background and you wanted to bring that kind of energy into the show, or did that accidentally happen?
I would say it's a little bit of both. So actually, the first ever show that I personally created was in high school. I was like 16, 17. Yeah. And I was a sports media guy in the beginning. And it was like funny shows and programming around sports. My first ever show was on my like local like channel listing. It was the sports debate show with Harrison Forman. And
I just like get your principal, like you had to pitch your principal on the show or something.
Yeah, I did. Great research. Yeah. They turned me down. Like they were like, Harrison, go join the Jewish American Club. I'm like, this isn't creative. Like I want to do like create something. And I had to go to like 4 different principals to get this green lit. And it was super rad, man. I mean, I think it was one of my first experiences like creating something or anything. And it obviously just so happened to kind of be in this like media entertainment space. And I had a sports comedy site in college that I called icethekicker.com. So we would just say like, yo, these are the top 10 dumbest athletes in sports. And yeah, and then some of it just happened organically because we don't love a lot of reality TV today. It is so like it's unscripted in theory, but it's still
manufactured.
I feel like I'm watching something that they like planned out. And part of the beauty, I think, of what we're doing, and especially what younger audiences want today, they want to see something unplanned, right? They want to see it happen in real time. So sports game, you don't know, like that's one of the few entertainment properties where you really don't know what's going to happen, right? You have no clue what's going to happen. And movies, someone might spoil the ending. TV shows, someone might the album drop, whatever. But sports, and I guess like kind of what we do, like you don't really know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So you had, you created this sports debate show in high school, kind of the impetus or the start of your media entertainment journey. Then you went to Michigan U, and after Michigan U, you moved to San Francisco to work at Facebook. You were working at Facebook and things seemed fine there. But where I'm trying to piece together the origin of updating, but it's complicated because it wasn't necessarily linear and or quick. You had this project that I feel like maybe could have been the start of updating for you? You were doing a lot of live dating yourself, like you were live dating your own show. Tell us a little bit about that
Yeah,
situation.
totally. So my day job was Facebook at the time, and I was helping like creators, right? I'm like, wait, why am I not, I need to get back to what I was doing, right? Which was kind of creating my own content. And I started this kind of funny blog where I would write about my dates and sort of, dating from like the guy's perspective, and did a few pieces around that. And then I ended up partnering with a kind of producer, and we came up with this idea for me to go on first dates and live stream them on Facebook Live. Facebook Live had kind of just launched. It was getting some buzz at the time. And I was just trying to do something to make a splash. And my humor has always been like self-deprecating, making fun of myself. So with permission, I do want to preface that, because that's the number one question I'm asked when I tell the story. Like, did the girls know? Did they know? And yes, they all knew. They were part of this kind of digital reality show. So I would live stream my dates, 3 parts. Before the date, I'm in an Uber. Hey guys, I'm going on this date tonight. I'm wearing a blue sweater, not the black. Comment below, because I wanted to make it interactive. And then midway through the date, I called it the halftime report. Then we still call it that, obviously. I would go in the bathroom mid date and do this halftime report update. So, hey guys, my date, she ordered a Guinness. Interesting drink choice on a first date. I'm hungry right now, but like I don't want to order food on a date. What should I do? I'm like, fam, what should I do? My mom's commenting. She's like, Harrison, like, make sure she's like Jewish. And my friends are like, dude, like you got this. Like they're so encouraging. And so I did this sort of live stream show. And ironically, like we did kind of call it updating, but it was digital only. Started getting a few other people in other cities kind of doing it, these halftime reports. So long story short, I did that. It was hitting for a few reasons. A, dating stuff. Look, anything dating content wise, people are just going to click. B, I think the live aspect, the raw aspect, people really liked at a time when that was starting to happen. C, I think this guy's perspective, people didn't really like see at the time, still don't really see at the time, or see today. Well, I'm sure we'll get into that. So, a few of these things were happening, and I'm like, all right, there's something here. I don't know what. And I was trying to find that big project to really break in and do what I love full time. And then I got hooked up. This guy, Mike Davis, who, good friend of mine, he hit me up out of the blue one time. He's like, yo, you gotta, Harrison, I know you're trying to figure out what to do. You gotta talk to my friend, Brandon Berman, this kid in Long Island. He's the funniest dude I've ever met. He's one of the few people who can make me laugh. You two together, like, I don't know what's going to happen. It's just going to be magic. And they had interned or something together. And, I had, before this time, I was kind of like doing all this stuff. I'm sure you know as well, with your podcast, like, dude, it's a lot of work being a creative, starting a creative project, right? Yep. It's a lot. A lot goes into it. And up until this time, I was doing it all alone. It was just so crazy. And so I got linked up with this dude, Brandon Berman, who is a stand-up performer here in New York, doing well, performing at all the different clubs, hilarious guy. So his brand of comedy meets like what I was doing on digital, my kind of brand and humor. It was just a match. We hit it off. The story goes, he was at a diner and 2 people were on like the shitty first date. Someone ordered a burger. He was with his ex-girlfriend and he's like, yeah, she's not into him. He's not into her. A couple of eureka moments happened. And it was sort of like, oh, wait, Harrison's format that he was doing on digital, let's pivot this into a live show, right? Because his brain was only live. My brain was digital. And so I thought it was such a sick perspective because it got us out of the noise. And so we put our brains together. I moved to New York to start this live version of updating, called updating, of course. And we started this live show and we just had complementary skills as co-producers, him as like hilarious, like, stand up host, me as this dating guy, this like co-host with him as like the sidekick and producer. Made a ton of sense.
Between first meeting Brandon and moving to New York, what was the time period there?
So we were just launching stuff. We were just testing stuff. And so it really was a couple years. Like,
were you guys interacting on a frequent basis?
Yeah, we were Skype was big then. We would Skype maybe once every month or two, just do phone calls. And, yeah, to just random calls talking about creative ideas. And to be honest, like there were a few of Brandon in my life at the time, right? Like all of us, right? I would call this guy, this girl, with this crazy idea. And we're just like figuring out how are we gonna do something that's really gonna break the mold. And it was dope. And I remember very, very well the first moment where we did have the idea of the stage show. Like I remember the exact notebook I used. I wrote across it date night live because we didn't want to use the term updating then. I was in my apartment in San Francisco. He was in New York. I was like standing on my bed. Like I think it's really for anyone creating something, like these moments do happen and they're pretty powerful. But
How'd you end up getting back to updating from Date Night Live? It
Date
just,
Night Live was just lame.
just yeah,
First of all, weak, right? Like just lame. I mean, I'm like reading this. I'm like, yo, what is this? Like, this is like so lame. Second of all, yo, this sick name was staring at us. I'm like, why? Like updating. That's so fresh. That is just fresh, right?
hmm
And the name, you know, obviously like dating's in there. It's like you're updating dating lives. I also love the name updating because you're updating the audience, right? On
Oh,
like how you're thinking, you're feeling. So it was like, yo, we're calling this updating, not
yeah.
updating live. Like we're just calling it updating. Like
Hmm.
it's updating.
I'm glad you went back that direction. I think the name fits well. So you ultimately move to New York. You go out and start to pursue the live show piece to it. Tell me about the very first show. Where'd you host it? How many people were there? How'd you get people in the door there?
The very, very first show was was in the basement of a small taqueria in Tribeca. This place, Zona Tribeca. Decrepit, disheveled place, like falling apart. We had to schmooze the owner who barely spoke English to let us use his basement to do this crazy show. The room I think only fit 20 people, and we tested the concept. We found two daters, one both through mutual friends. We're like, yo, just do this kind of like experiment with us. We're testing some things. We're just gonna throw you on this blindfolded date in front of an audience. I think we just did like $10 tickets or something. It was mostly our friends. We wanted to prove it out. Um, I remember the very first show. I also created flashcards. I felt I like it felt like a rehearsal almost, right? And so I created these feedback cards, which I was super pumped about. So I put it on every chair. What to do like most about this? What to do like least? Give me your email and tell me what's up, right? And just to get some like it was a survey, right? It was a survey from the show.
What did you learn from the feedback cards?
And this was from the feedback cards and like the reaction in the room. People could not stop laughing the whole show, like the whole first show. Like it was clear that this was hilarious, like even funnier than I even like anticipated. I knew the relatable would be there. I didn't know it would be as funny to people, like seeing these strangers be so cringeworthy and awkward. So like that was the what did we love most, like and they loved how the audience got involved, like they could shout things, which I thought was cool. The negative feedback from the first show was not less negative and more like ideas, like people, we didn't lean into the blindfolds as much early on.
What do you mean?
So we would the date, they wouldn't be blindfolded for nearly as long during the show. Like they would be blindfolded, barely. And then it would be mostly like a date without the blindfolds. So people like the blindfolds. And then as I really thought about it, the blindfolds, I mean, just gold, right? Like, we go on these dating app dates where everything is very superficial, appearance, and these blindfolds on, you are transported into another universe.
Hmm.
And I just thought it was so gold and like TV friendly. So yeah, so that was the first ever show.
That's cool.
Pretty crazy. Yeah.
So first show was 20 people. The shows are much larger now, I believe, probably like around 200 or so.
200. Yeah, we're
Okay.
selling out shows, 200 people, wait lists.
Multiple times a week too. You do a Friday and a Saturday show for the
Yeah,
most part.
a lot of weeks we'll do two a week. Typically like 4 to 6 per month, I would say.
Uh-huh.
Post COVID, fine, and whatever's happening now, but still finding that sweet spot. But yeah, no, we're
Nice.
we're doing like a bunch of these per month.
I love some of the early stories of your guys' growth as well. You were such guerrilla marketers. Like I believe you like went into like bars with flyers and you were like convincing people to come to the show just doing that methodology versus what would traditionally be like blasting on social media and going that direction, which I'm sure you did a little bit of. But I love that you're just boots on the ground and like getting, seats filled that way too.
Oh, totally. I appreciate that. I'm getting goosebumps hearing you say that. No, I mean, the truth is, we there's so much noise online. There is so much noise online. But yeah, dude, we were like, how do we we just how do we promote this? And we're great. We're really good promoters, and that's part of creating project. Yes, you have to know the content, but messaging and marketing and promoting is like such a huge part of the battle today. And we were kind of analytical about it. Like we would go bar to bar. We printed out thousands of these little cards. New York obviously has a ton of people, and I would look at, or Brandon would look at, like a group of three people by the bar. If we go up to them, that's like $45, right? If we're selling $50 tickets, there are 10 people over there at this big group table. We literally would walk up to mid dinner, like, yo, what's up? Sorry to interrupt. We have the 6 show updates, blind date from an audience. Don't have to be single. Ton of fun. You guys should come through. Oh, this sounds cool. Like, when's the next show? Friday. Some of them would pull out their phone and buy a ticket right there.
Wow.
And it's like you gotta do that. Sometimes I miss doing that, and I sometimes, if we have the show during a busy week or something like that, we'll still promote. Like, we're always promoting. The promoting never stops. I'm in the elevator with someone, I'll promote. You just cannot stop promoting that. And I also do think that's part of why in the long term, I think we're going to be we're going to be in a really great place because of that one-to-one interaction, right? A lot of these kind of like A-list, like celebrity comedians, they get casted on whatever. We have this insane one-to-one like interaction with like our audience that, like, I think is unrivaled. It makes us feel really approachable, and it helped us grow early on. So
yeah, it's been cool. I've seen, or I've heard you talk about some of the distinctive moments
you
from the show.
hustle too as well. I could
You
tell.
have to.
Yeah, you're
You
putting
have
in the
to.
work. You have to, right? You have to.
So some distinctive moments from the show. I know you mentioned you had an engagement in the audience during one of the
Yeah.
shows. You've made an appearance on the show itself as well. One of my favorite stories I heard you talk about was sourcing male participants. And I feel like maybe that was a struggle early on. I'm guessing it probably isn't a struggle now. I'm sure you get an influx of people, but this particular moment was this older divorced woman that was coming on the show, and you didn't really have a pair for her. So can you tell me about the story of how you found Ernie?
Ernie, we love Ernie. Also, that name, how funny is that name?
Awesome.
It's the best name. Like, it just, the whole the whole thing was just magic. So we sometimes, for those listening, we do spin-off versions of Updating Divorcee. We do shows for LGBTQ audience as well. So we do a lot of spin-off shows. We did a Divorcee edition. We found this unbelievable divorced mother of 2 or 3. Her name's Maura. Beautiful, smart, amazing, like really hoping for a second chance at love. Like we found her, we're like, okay, you are booked. And we could not find a guy for the longest time. Like, we had men drop out. We tried like a 40-year-old. He's like, nah, I can't do this. Then I think I found like a grandpa who backed out. We were just having trouble finding a guy for this. And men, as listeners know, generally afraid to be vulnerable, let alone in front of a live audience, especially older men, because they're coming from a generation where like none of this like emotional stuff was happening, right? So very hard for them to open up. So we had to find a guy. Long story short, similar to the story about like selling tickets, we went to about 15 different bars in Manhattan on like 2 nights looking for guys. Like, I would joke, like, we're to the only guys, we're looking for men. Like, we're literally going bar to bar, like looking for guys. And we go to this one bar in like Midtown or something. We're sitting there, we're like so dismayed. It's not going to happen. What are we going to do with Maura? Like, can't give her like a 22-year-old who doesn't know himself.
Yep.
So we, and out of the corner of our eye, I see this group of like five like dads, like basically like a Tony Soprano, like barbecue crew, you know the type, right?
Yeah.
Like just like cool looking. And we went over there and they pointed, one of the guys said, talk to Ernie. He's recently divorced. Super cool dude, was the nicest guy in the world. I think his only requirement was like, don't tell his daughter or something.
That's funny.
And we booked him.
So no creative project goes without a little bit of criticism and rejection. I'm sure there was a good amount of rejection when you were giving out the cards. Really interested how you handled criticism around. I believe you had a reporter that like sent you like a 2-page email saying that your show was like ruining society. How did that make you initially feel? And how did you come to peace with that criticism?
It's an amazing question. It's a really, really good question. I think, you know, it's really interesting, actually. I mean, I'm all about love, right? And so this was the first ever, like, the second, and we have a lot of love for our show. I would say like all 99% of people love what we're doing, right? Similar with The Rock or, any of these great, like Tarantino, like most people love them,
Yep.
but it's impossible. It is literally impossible to create something that is 100%, that is loved by 100% of people. Like everyone will have a hot take. The first time I saw this email, I'll be honest, like I was a little hurt because I disagreed with everything this reporter was saying. I don't think she had the full context. She was actually only at like 30% of the show as well. So she was there like 20 to 30 minutes. So I was a little kind of upset at the critique. And then the more I realized, like, the more I thought about it, you can't let this kind of critique or shutdown, like, you just can't let it stop you, right? Like, sure, we'll take feedback. Look, if you have ideas, sure. Like, we've got a few good ideas from audience members, right? Who are like, yo, you guys should do, I think this would be a little bit better. And like, we've incorporated them. Like, no project is perfect. I'm all ears, right? This person was like really trashing us. I didn't like the attitude about it. But then again, I realized, like, look, this isn't going to stop us. Like, you listen to it, you get it. When the haters come in, sure, okay, but it should be like water. It's water under a bridge. Is that the saying?
It's got to be,
like,
right?
That's right. It's water on a rock or something. These are not stop signs. They're barely even speed bumps. It's a part of the game. So for those creating, if you've ever gotten like a negative comment or something, like, yeah, and you deleted it or it made you feel upset. Look, everyone has felt this way. You just can't let it stop you. You just can't, right? And you do have to kind of have a thick skin. The short answer is what choice do you have? You have to just keep going.
That's
right?
good perspective. I mean, honestly, it's
yeah,
it's a balance. You
Yeah.
definitely need to be listening if you see repeated patterns and feedback or criticism that you get, but these one-offs, it is what it is. And I feel like I've heard many creatives talk about their story, and the first time they start making some ripples or getting some criticism is typically the launching point for what is a bigger explosion in the long run. So it's really hard.
Love that. You hear about these stories from other creators, and they seem like almost too much of a movie, right? Like the critique happened and then we blew up from there. But we've kind of been like living it, and the reality is, like, if you really want to do something that is different, that is groundbreaking, that maybe pushes the boundaries, that's not what everyone else is doing, this is gonna happen. It's gonna happen, right? I mean, like you said, there are thousands of examples of these, thousands. Everyone, literally everyone who, if you try and do something different or bold, this is going to happen. Not everyone is going to be happy with a change in the status quo. So you just have to be comfortable with that.
You seem so authentic and sure of yourself, but I know you struggled early on, especially with this label of a comedian and being, considering yourself a comedian and maybe even a creator in some aspects of your life as well. Are you past that imposter syndrome, and B, if so, or even if not, what advice do you have for people that are kind of stuck in that situation right now?
Yeah, for me, because I think like anyone who does a few different things in their career, there's always that what am I kind of, it comes up, right? Like, are you a marketer? Are you business? Are you creative? Are you a writer? Are you a producer? Like all these things are going to come up. And so this comedian thing, like reporters start calling me, obviously Update's a funny comedy show. And, I've always, yeah, like people are like, yo, you're a comedian. And I think for me, because I didn't go the traditional like stand-up comedy route, like that's why it like first threw me off, right? And I was like Googling like, what is a, what is a comedian? And the reality is like, for let's talk like that example specifically, like comedian is just someone who makes people laugh, right? So I think throughout my life, like I've always like I like just being myself, like I I can get a chuckle, right? I think I like started looking at that. I'm like, yo, you like there are 20 different, there are so many different paths to get to like an end goal, right? And I think that's why at first I was like, wait, what am I? And my my creative partner, obviously more traditional route, hilarious dude, he's so funny. And obviously we go well together. And I think the imposter syndrome was real. It was definitely real. And then the more I like got into it, and the less I started, the less I overthought, and all of this, like it just started happening organically and authentically. And me being a comedian, me being a creator, like, and I would even talk about in like therapy. I'm like, oh, what what is it? And then like, oh my God, like, because also when you have to do other crap to pay the bills, it confuses the
Mm.
shit out of your brain. Like it really confuses you. And then ultimately what I did, Justin, like you you have this wall, right? You have this metaphorical wall, and there's all these things you've done in your whole life. And it's cheesy, but like the writing is on the wall, and I'm looking at all these things, and like I've been doing like all those other examples, right? That funny like sports talk show. Like I saw all these, like the writing's on the wall. Like I'm a creator, I'm a funny dude. You want to call me a comedian? That's great. Like the writing was on the wall. So it's like people view you based off of what you've done. So you shouldn't have imposter syndrome because that's what you're doing, right? And I think every creator will always have self-doubt. That's just, again, that's a part of the journey. The way to get rid of self-doubt, the only way I know to get rid of self-doubt, actually, I guess a couple of different ways. The best way is by doing. Just keep doing. You just have to keep doing. And then more people are going to say you're that thing. So yeah, it's a really good question. I think I'm over it now, and it's so freeing. It's really so freeing. And so I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. It's a calling. Sure, I could have checked out law school. I don't even know what you do in law school.
Yeah. Ultimately, you could have stayed at Facebook. You didn't have to go the law school route. I know leaving Facebook wasn't an easy black and white decision for you. You were looking around at a lot of your friends in traditional jobs, making buku of money, and deciding or wondering if they were making the right decision or if you were making the right decision. But you ultimately came down to the fact that you needed to make the decision for yourself. And I'm kind of curious how you adapted and balanced your desire to make an impact, which for you, I would
Yeah.
consider making people smile, your impact that you want to leave on the world, with paying the bills, because ultimately you do need to pay your bills as well.
For me, I think like mentors always taught me like kind of side hustle until main hustle or something, and
Mm.
that always kind of stuck in my head. Like, to get your create. First of all, it's very hard to have creative projects fund your life. Like everyone wants that to happen. A lot of people, it's not. This is. It's a lot easier to make a ton of money at some B2B CRM tool
Yep.
that you're the second sales guy or girl, and it blows up, right? You can make money in a lot of different ways, but like I said earlier, I think it's a calling. And ultimately leaving Facebook, I had kind of reached my limit there. I kind of learned everything I wanted to learn there. Clearly it's just not the place for me long term. Like I had that desire. I was seeing traction with this other project, and sometimes you gotta just jump in, right? And you just have to you really just have to do that. And so at the end of the day, big companies, I mean, I don't really fit in as an employee anywhere, let alone a really big company like that, right? Where you're kind of just, you're a cog. And I'm so grateful for Facebook. So sick. Like the stuff I learned, I got to see this from the other side. I mean, man, like I'm so happy I worked there, not Zenefits or like HR payroll, right?
Yep.
Like so sick. But again, at the end of the day, like you just have to take the dive. And I think when you have product market fit, that's when you take the dive.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it's actually really interesting. I've been covering taking risk on my show here the last few episodes. I guess very much so just
yeah.
storyline and project driven for the last few people that I've talked to. And you're probably going to capstone this as I move into a new chapter on the coming year here with guest. The risk paid off for you though. Let's talk a little bit about the news that happened this month. So you ended up your show broke through. You signed with an agent, and
Oh, it's
where are you at now
so
with the show?
nice here. We signed with WME, William Morris, like one of the bigger agencies that exist for people, pursuing stuff in entertainment. Super, super exciting. And we had worked with kind of like some of these Hollywood types in the past who have tried to help us, but really wasn't the same. Like this is for us, it's such a nice, it does feel nice. I'm not gonna lie, because of the support and the full team around us, right? So specifically with WME, if we were actors, then a company like WME, they can really only help you in like one area, right? Like get auditions, right, for that acting job. That's cool, but because updating has a huge digital play, right? With digital, because we have a property that's going to tour, we have a show that's going to be in all these cities, because we want to adapt this and we're in talks to adapt this for TV and we want to produce other stuff. Like WME specifically is the best partner for us because they are experts in all these different areas, right? So if I want to go ahead and write a book someday, like they have a book department. If we want to license updating in Jamaica, I don't know why I said Jamaica, but Jamaica, like that, this is what they do, right? Like they don't just sign actors, like they're signing Berman and I as individuals, which is awesome because long term I'm sure we're going to want to do other projects, which is great, but they're also signing this show that they think can be really special, and it's really rewarding, and it's nice. Obviously a lot, now like the real work begins because you got to make all these people happy. There's still a bottom line at the end of the day, right? So it's time to make this as big as it can be, monetize it as much as it can be, and then really build a career. So yeah, it's a big moment. And yeah, just a plug for like the mental side there. I'll be honest, Justin, like this article that we had with this announcement, I visualized in my head probably for like 5 years. Like Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, like like even Berman and I, we're both very much about like kind of the law of attraction kind of stuff. Since we started like 2.5 years ago, we would be like, yo, this Deadline article with our big announcement, our names in like Hollywood, like it's gonna be sick. Like I'm gonna hand down the subway and we would literally just talk about it all the time. Like, yo, I can't wait for this Deadline. And we would talk to these like crappy publicists like, yo, get us this. And the reality was they couldn't get us this. We had to go get it. Right. And so it was, yeah, it's a great moment. I think this is going to be this is going to be an extremely exciting year. Like we're just ready. So
yeah, it's so true. I actually wrote down law of attraction as a potential thread to talk about with you because through my research, I was hearing you talk about law of attraction on some shows 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's not like you're just now talking about this idea because it came to actualization. I was listening to you talk about law of attraction, getting ready to have this interview at the end of November, early December. We had a push and then we pushed again because of your signing. And it's kind of crazy now looking back on that, what you've actually like attracted into your life. Do you ever like take a step back and think about that?
Oh, I mean, you're too kind. And getting emotional. Well, I mean, for sure. I think like at the end of the day, you as well, like people who, have these crazy goals, we have these goals, right? And I think, yeah, it's definitely, look, it's definitely an emotional moment. We're still not there yet, so I have to keep going. We're still not quite there yet. We're almost, like, we're en route, which is nice. Like the analogy is like we're on the plane, like we're in the air, which is great. Where are we going to land? When are we going to land? But the plane is shut. No one's like this airport. We're on the plane, which is sick. But there's still a lot of work to do. It's definitely emotional. I mean, I'm a firm believer in law of attraction. I've had some very low points in my 20s, very low points in my 20s, very low points. And I think it's like I said earlier, like you just have to keep going. So what I'm trying to do with this moment, I think you have to do two things. You have to keep going, because if you have these bigger goals, right? Like this, I didn't get a $10 million check in my pocket, right? Like this is a great deal, but no, we didn't get that. But number two, you do have to appreciate the moments too, and you have to love yourself. I think previously and in the past, I don't know if I would have like loved myself or treated. Now, of course, I like love myself, but I don't think I would have like. You still have to give yourself pats on the back, right? Like Berman and I think we went to like Nobu and like like expensive sushi spot, like get the crispy sushi there, like, and treat ourselves, right? Like, though you have to do that. I'm a firm believer in that, because at the end of the day, a fear that people have is that I've had is like, all right, I'm so stressed, like I'm working to this like big goal. I'm going to get to like the end of the game. And then I'm like, they're still empty. I'm like, oh, what's happening? And that's a huge fear. And I think like the goal is happiness, right? This is a professional piece of my overall happiness. That's very important. So the goal is happiness, and you have to love yourself for these moments. It's the longest answer of all time, but yeah. And the law of attraction, look, for those listening, I think it's like, I adhere to it. It's a philosophy and principle that I just believe in. And it essentially says like you attract the energy, you attract the goals by like thinking about them all the time, right? And putting them on your wall, making them happen, manifesting them. And I just really, really believe that for so many reasons. Like our brain at the end of the day doesn't really know what's real or imaginary.
Yep.
Or my hand does, like I'm holding this, but my brain doesn't. So you have to train your brain. You have to like give your thoughts these sick images, like this Deadline article, this TV deal, all this stuff. And by doing that over and over, it has to happen. It will materialize. So I just think it's like, I just think it's a very real thing. And like the other side of that, sorry for going on and on with this answer.
Go for it.
The mundane side of this is like you wake up and you're like, yo, I really feel crappy. Like today's going to be a shitty day. You know what happens? You're going to have a shitty day. Like you will have a shitty day. That's also the law of attraction, right? That's the law of attraction we don't want, because you're and I know me, when I have some of those moments or like anxiety or anything, it goes into this rabbit hole. And I'm like, what are you doing? The only way to get out of these anxious things is by like literally telling, like, it's fine. Like, get out of it. I'm like, chill. I was in Woodstock, New York earlier. I bought this little like tiny book. It's called like How to Stay Calm. I'm a psycho. I'm trying so
What did you take away from that book?
I just got it. So the cover looked cool. I think reading the word calm makes you calm.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And you also have a digital fireplace going on right now. So
I do. Yeah, we can flash the screen of that. Yeah. Digital fireplace.
Love it.
Which I'm curious to see how long this stays out. I'm a big music person, jazz and piano and stuff in the background. I kind of like this, honestly.
I dig it
Even
too.
Even more relaxing.
Do you feel hotter with that on?
That's a good question. That's
Well,
so funny.
Harrison, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'm
Oh,
really
Justin,
excited
awesome. No,
to see the next chapter in your life. Hopefully, attracting some kind of Netflix documentary here in the near future too, so I can watch and tune into that. I know if people were resonating with something you say, if they want to check out updating, they can go to updatingshow.com for tickets and for casting there. You can also head over to your Instagram or TikTok. That's updating show. Anywhere else that you'd like to direct people?
definitely all the updating accounts. And for those listening, if you're not in New York, no problem. We're going to be going to other cities, and we're also going to be flying in people who are really sick for the show to New York.
Hmm.
So, if you have any friends who want to be on it, definitely apply online. And yeah, follow me personally at HT Forman. I post writing, movie recs, music recs, more like personal stuff. Yeah, check me out there. But no, this was fun, Justin. You're super talented. Really appreciate all the research. I think you're en route to some big things, man. So really
Nice.
appreciate you having me on. And yeah, I mean, this was fun. I could go
I,
on and on.
I appreciate it, Harrison. I got a final question for you. If you had
For
the
sure.
opportunity to teach a 16-week class to a group of graduating college seniors on a topic that isn't normally covered in the classroom, what would you teach and how would you teach it?
Oh my God. Like a niche subject or like
Whatever you want,
something.
man. Whatever you want.
Okay.
If you pick a college course you wish you had as a graduating college senior.
Because I don't know if I want to go the relevant to my life stuff or like just a weird interest or like an interest.
Most people typically go like relevant to your life or practical skill that every like
Yeah.
graduating college senior has. But if you also have just like an off the cuff interest that you would love to like teach,
All right.
feel free
Maybe
to
I'll do
talk on that.
I'll do both. I'll do both. So the off the cuff one, I'm one of my subtle interests is like futurism for sure.
Mhm.
Teaching a course on life outside Earth would be really cool. I think I think we just launched some telescope. I'm
Yeah.
like, people don't even know this about me. Like I geek out on stuff like that. So I would teach, that would be like my niche, like all the explanations on like how we're gonna, astronomy, life outside Earth. So I think
That
that'd be cool.
telescope looks super dope too.
Looks
We're supposed
sick.
to
It's
get
like the
like
biggest in
amazing.
history or something.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. It's the Webb, right? The
Yep.
Webb. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
the Hubble.
Yeah.
So that would be one. And then for my class, I would say, ooh, how to stay sane and laugh during the start of your creative journey or something.
What would be like
A class,
yeah, what would one of the
a
classes look
lecture.
like there? Yeah.
What would a lecture be? It's a
Is
really
it
good
is it
question.
lecture based too, or is there an activity? Do
Oh,
you
we would definitely do activities. I would say, one day we would do a field trip to the woods, leave your phone, bring a notebook.
Hmm.
Like that would be a fun field trip. I would love to have my class do. We would definitely do like mindful a meditation workshop. I think that would be really cool. Another would be, yeah, kind of writing out like a mini screenplay would be a class, like. And then one lecture would definitely be, I'm definitely like, I'm a firm believer no idea is a bad idea. So
Yeah.
one class I think would be sick, like 1,000 viral marketing ideas for your project, and
Hmm.
you literally have to write out 1,000 ideas. Maybe
That would
not
be
a
fun.
thousand, let's do like 200. But that's a really good question.
That's
Awesome.
cool. And I think another thing you do really well is this whole self-deprecation piece to it too. You just don't take yourself very seriously. So
Yeah.
if like someone is just giving you grief on something, you're like, oh, whatever. They could be right. They could be wrong. I just don't really care.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think without a doubt, yeah, that could be a class too. That, I guess in that episode or that lecture, we would just watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, like eight episodes of that, and just see that's such a good exercise. Like we're just not, as and I'm sure other people you've interviewed, like we're just formal education, still not quite there for
Yep.
like what matters in the real world, right? And oh my God, yeah, like self-awareness is the key.
Mhm.
It's the key.
So true. So
But
true, man. Well, Harrison, it's been
awesome.
an absolute blast. Thanks again for giving me so much of your time. Super excited to stay connected with you in the future. And yeah, really looking forward to everything.
Awesome, Justin. Thank you for having me. For those listening, Justin is your guy. He's the man.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you like this conversation today, be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified about new episodes. If you want to connect with me, send me a message on Instagram. I'm at Justin Lee Peters. You can find show notes with links to everything we discussed today at justinpeters.co. This episode was produced by Gabby Dimeke. I'm your host, Justin Peters. Thanks for tuning in.